credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee and the Wendat people. And is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, Métis people. I also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 signed with the Mississauga of the Credit and the Williams Treaty signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa Band. So welcome everybody. I'm delighted to have you here. This is an opportunity for us as a working group to discuss the city's proposal to develop a conceptual plan that will eventually go out to tender to the marketplace for 2444 Eglinton Avenue East. The working group is comprised of approximately 15 members of the community. The opportunity for us as a working group to discuss the city's plan to develop at 2444 Eglinton Avenue through its agency, Creatio. The City of Toronto has, and all of you know this because this was discussed in previous meetings. We've had a couple of meetings so far. We started meeting in April. As part of the Housing Now, the City of Toronto initiated through council a policy directive where cities own lands that are deemed appropriate are utilized for affordable housing within the context of the city's definition, looking at ensuring that within that you have mixed income, mixed use in the transit-oriented communities. This location is essentially across the street from the Kennedy subway station. And so we know that it is part of the transit community. This site has been in place for about 30 years. And I use the term in place because there's been discussions around developing this site in a number of different conceptual plans. Some were commercial in nature, some were residential, but none of it had developed. It was just all conceptual conversation. So Jason, I just want to acknowledge you, Jason Chen from Creatio, and thank you very much for being here with us. And my staff members that are with us, Keisha and Keisha Francis and Ihor Wands. The city has, as you know, decided that they're going to have a development on this site, and it's obviously initiated by the city and then will be essentially directed through a tender process to the marketplace, where the marketplace and whoever that bidder is, that successful bidder, will come forward with a proposal to develop on this site. What we've seen from Creatio is a concept that's possible, and members of the community have seen that, and they have had a chance to weigh in on that, and that's terrific. And we'll be doing a little bit more of that this evening. I want to make it clear that Creatio doesn't report to me or to my office. Creatio is a independent agency of the City of Toronto. They are responsible for developing and any of the city's lands and or engaging with respect to a broad range of development opportunities, that is working with the private sector based on what their criteria and mandate is, based on the principles of Creatio. And so Creatio has come with a plan that they had envisioned and that's brought to the community, and I've seen it at the same time as members of the community and so on. And so there are elements of the plan which I think are interesting, and then there are elements of the plan that I think that we have some work to do. So this working group had the opportunity to provide input and to ask questions, to make suggestions, and those inputs and suggestions and questions will form part of the development and the conceptual development that will go to the marketplace. And so this is an opportunity for members of the community to provide their inputs and ask questions and so on. I know that we heard from members of the community some time ago. I think it was the June meeting where it was June 28, actually, to be exact. And prior to that, we heard concerns around the building heights, blocking, sun blocking, and views that were impaired according to members of the community with respect to what's being proposed. There was comments around lack of communication and engagement with the community, and about a done deal. I think that's one of the comments that someone had made, and so on. There was also additional comments around the issue around the density, and they are talking about limits and the infrastructure capacity and noise from construction and construction activities and so on. There was also a comment around the concentration with respect to affordable housing in Scarborough. Some people feel that there is too much of it, and Scarborough has done their bit to address the issue with respect to housing and affordable housing in the city of Toronto. There was a concern as well around the proximity with respect to the rail as well as the hydro corridor, and the issue with respect to the impact of the hydro electrical currents and so on, and what potentially that impact that would have on the residents living there and so on. There was issues around school capacity, the issue around the parking, loss of parking, and issue around traffic and so on and so forth. So those were some of the points that were raised by members of the community as part of our discussion. We talked a little bit as well about crime, safety, and program for open space, landscaping, community services, facilities, and so on. And so those are traditional conversation that takes place when any development is being proposed. We have a vast array of development activity that's taking place in the community, stretching from Victoria Park, essentially coming all the way to Kennedy. The height and density of the buildings that are being proposed in that area, it varies. So the proposal that is being presented by Creatio, and I don't know this for a fact, I'm just presuming that they may have taken a look at some of the activities that are taking place along the Golden Mile and so on and so forth. But again, I don't speak for Creatio. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is a bit of an overview in terms of where we have come and some of the things that we have discussed. So certainly there will be an opportunity for more input from you this evening, as well as to hear from Creatio. So that is sort of my opening remarks for this meeting. And then what I'd like to do, Jason, I just wanted to kind of hear from you. I know that there had been a number of comments and questions and so on, and requests from members of the community and so on for information. I'm just wondering if you can maybe just give me sort of a status update on that before we proceed sort of a general conversation and so on. And also, it would be good if we have, I'm presuming you have a concept drawing of what was initially presented and so on, so we could sort of go through that particular exercise again with members of the community, and to maybe review some of the conversation with respect to what we have done. I see Ron has just put up a question about introduction of members. I thought that we all knew each other. I didn't realize there was anyone that was new to introduce. I think that all the people that were here are all the members of the working group. You have a list of those, so I'm not sure necessarily that's something that's wanted. If people want to introduce themselves, by all means, go ahead.
There are two people from Creatio that I would just like to introduce. I don't know.
Sure, that would. Well, I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you with respect to that, Jason, because I'll give you the floor for that. So, if there is members of the working group who are not aware as to each other, I invite you to introduce yourselves now.
My name is Sanal. I'm with Rainbow Village.
Yes, thank you. Eglinton. Yes, we met before. Thank you. Yes, good to see you again, Sanal. And I have your name here. So, anyone else?
My name is Khalid, and I'm the president for Rainbow Village Condo Board.
Good to see you again, Khalid.
Hello, Michael. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Hi, it's Ron Parkinson.
Yes, hi, Ron.
The reason why I'm asking who the members are is because we never had any real introduction to anyone. If you're part of a working group, you get to congregate together to understand what the goal is, share ideas, and work together. This has not happened. And I'm disappointed with that part of it. And, you know, we're all looking at each other on the screens, but we don't know who you are, where you're from, and what are the issues. So I've only seen, and with Jason's help, I've had responses, but we haven't been sharing it. So it's very important, if we're really going to accomplish anything here, that we need to be transparent, and we need to have everyone's ideas put on the table so we can share that. So I'm with Trevorton Park, and I myself have lots of people who can't participate on this, and certainly want to, because they feel they need a voice too. So I just want to
thank you very much, Ron.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Sorry, can I just add something to that? Thanks.
Sure, go ahead, Jason.
I just wanted to confirm and make sure, you know, as Ron mentioned, you know, transparency is key here. And I know at one time, you know, there was just the question to just confirm and make sure that everybody in the working group is comfortable, you know, with kind of corresponding together with the sharing of email addresses and all that. Just wanted to confirm that that's not problematic for anybody from the working group to continue in that fashion.
It's fine, Jason.
Any
That's
comments?
Fine. That's fine.
Okay,
Share
great.
whatever you need to share.
Okay, great.
Fantastic, thank you. All right, anyone else wishing to introduce themselves?
I'm Shobha. I live in a building beside this new project, but I've been on the calls before, so I think I
Yes.
you. Yeah.
Good to see you again, Shoa. Thank you. Good to see you.
Thanks.
I'm
Okay.
Mark Richardson. I'm a volunteer with an organization called Housing Now TO, which tracks affordable housing developments around the city of Toronto.
Thanks, Mark. Good to see you again. All right, anyone else? I'm just looking at my list here and see no one else. Okay, so Jason, over to you, and you can introduce your team, and over to you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So just on our team from Creatio, we have Nicole Spina and Susan O'Neill here to assist. They're from our communications team, and they're really here to assist as well, just on listening, making sure that what we're hearing today is recorded, noted, so everyone's on the same page with the correspondence for tonight's meeting, as well as there are some working group members that cannot attend today, so they will draft up some minutes from this meeting, and we can circulate that around to the working group.
Excellent.
So cannot attend, they can, I guess, create TOs. You know, we'll circulate it to everyone to make sure, I guess, that we've heard everything correctly from this meeting, and then we can issue those out to the folks that cannot make it tonight. As Deputy Mayor Thompson mentioned, the concept that I guess that Creatio has come up with is still a draft reference concept. So this is really Creatio's vision while working with the consultant team, with architects, landscape architects, civil engineers, traffic consultants, and really this is what we're using this is a basis point for our market offering process. This is also a plan that's been vetted somewhat by city staff, in the sense that, when we go out to market for a developer partner, they will have some assurance that this is what is in the realm of possibility. It's not going to be exactly like this plan, but at least developer proponents will know that, hey, this is something that is possible. This is something that can be developed. It's been floated through city staff as well for comments. So the whole concept is to kind of give developer proponents an idea of, hey, this site can be developed with something similar to this reference concept. We are far from a done deal, I guess, has been mentioned. We are actually very early on in the stage of the process. Creatio is not actually submitting the formal planning applications to the City of Toronto. It will be done by the developer proponent. And I guess in a typical process, that really is when the community consultation and kind of more of the formal discussions take place, is once an application is actually made to the city. So we have not done that yet. Creatio is not going to be doing that. We are going to leave that up to the developer proponents to handle that. So they will, once we select the developer proponent, they will then gear up and they will come up with the development concept, and then they will prepare all the reports, plans, studies that are required to support what their development concept will be. Ours is just, our reference concept is really just to guide, I guess, developer proponents on what could be possible and how to develop the site.
So Jason, just before you go ahead, so I take it what you're saying is this: there has to be a starting point conceptually, right?
Correct.
And what is actually in place is just that. And so for folks who are interested, they have an opportunity to kind of capture, based on what's being presented by Creatio, an expression of what is conceptually possible. But I hear you say that, and again, Creatio is not the developer submitting the development application to the city. It will be whoever that winning bidder is that will bring forward that application. But this is an opportunity for certainly the working group now, and it is not inconsistent with respect to other types of application, to be able to talk and drill down to this exercise and kind of get into the sort of nooks and cranny of a development opportunity. And at a later point in time, there will be broader consultation process with the community, right? Is that what I hear you saying?
Absolutely. Deputy
Okay.
Mayor, or is it possible that I can share my screen? I can't.
Yeah, I think that we can make that happen. Yes. Give us a
Okay.
second. Thank you.
I do have a slide that kind of shows a timeline and the touch points with the working group.
Yeah.
Yes, Jason, you can go ahead.
Okay. Okay, great. Second, give me a minute.
Okay.
I think this is just, can everybody see what's on the screen? Is anything popping up there?
Yes.
Yeah, we can see it. I can see it.
Okay. Does everybody see right now stages of consultation with the working group?
Yes.
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, so this is just the general timeline, and I guess it is part of our agenda tonight is to kind of go over the timeline, next steps, where are the touch points with the consultation with the working group. So as Deputy Mayor Thompson mentioned, we had our first community meeting, which is not kind of a mandated public meeting, but it was kind of, we met in April, April 13th of this year. We went out to the community because that is when we had a concept that our consultants had come up with that city staff were comfortable with us presenting. So that is why we said, okay, we're at a point now that we can come to the community and present a concept that has been vetted somewhat by city staff. After that meeting, as everyone will recall, recall, we Deputy Mayor Thompson requested to form a working group. So that had happened, and we had our second working group meeting in June 28th. And that was really to also further confirm and solidify the role of the working group and how they would work with throughout the development process in the future. So here we are now at our second working group meeting, number 2 today. And after this meeting, the next real step for us advancing anything would be to start our market offering process. We haven't done that yet. I think in the past we said we were going, I think I was unfortunately was not at the last meeting in June, but I believe it was meant we'd probably go sometime in September. It's already pretty much September. So, you know, realistically, I don't know if it'll go out this month, but hopefully, you know, we plan on having the market offering process start in October. And once that starts, that still takes a while, right? You know, we have to make sure that we do a very good process in terms of criteria, having all the sufficient documents and the city's asks in that whole market offering process solidified. So that process takes a while. It'll take at least 3 to 4 months. And the other thing is we have to evaluate all of these offers very carefully. We shortlist, we negotiate with you know, the shortlist developer proponents. There's also a very transparent process where we also have a oh, I forgot the name of them. Susan, can you remind me what they're called again? The not a transparency.
Fairness monitor?
Yes, that's it. Thank you very much, Mark. I can't
No
believe
problem.
I forgot the name of that. The fairness monitor. So we also
It's okay, Jason.
we also have a fairness monitor that oversees the whole process to make sure that it has been transparent. And they do sit through, you know, all the evaluation meetings, all the negotiation meetings with the developer proponents until we come to the point of selecting a partner. So that's why we've got that here. Developer partner selected would be kind of the next big milestone. And so what we're saying is, oh, sorry, and back to the market offering process, just wanted to ensure and let the working group know that as part of that package that we create for developer proponents of this process, we are going to provide all of the public consultation materials. So we will have a link to the April 13th community meeting for developer proponents to view that. We'll have minutes for the working group meeting that we had in June. We'll have any correspondence as well on like Q&As that have come across from the working group or from the community. We'll add that to the, I guess what we call an online data room. So all of that stuff will be viewed by developer proponents. So coming in, you know, they'll be coming in, you know, eyes totally wide open on what the issues are right off the bat, even before considering putting in a bid, right? They will read all of this documentation and understand what the issues are, what the concerns are of the community, and that will all be very transparent as part of the process. So after that, once the bids come in and a developer partner is selected, before they get started on anything, what we figured is we would do an introduction to the developer proponent with the working group. So that really is the point of this, is once we announce the developer partner, their first step is, well, obviously meet with Deputy Mayor Thompson. That's, I guess, step number 1. And then step number 2 would be sit down, have an introduction to the working group, and that is where the working group can you know, voice all the concerns and the issues that were had with the reference concept. They, at this point, they wouldn't have even gotten started yet. And then after that, we figure they would take away the comments and the concerns and then start working on their design development and what their development concept is going to be. And once they've had an opportunity to work on their development concept, that is when we figure, okay, they will then meet with the working group again and discuss their initial development concept prior to making their formal submission to the city for the rezoning. And that's where the process gets more formal. is when they make an actual application to the city. So before they make that formal application to the city, they would have met with a working group already twice. Once is an intro to hear all the issues, and secondly, to go over the development proposal with the working group. And then they would take away the comments from working group meeting number 4, and then keep working on a formal submission to the city. But that is really the start of their process when they make that application. After that, there will be a formal mandated community public meeting, and that will involve, once again, the entire area of neighborhood residents. And then after that, we figure they would get the feedback from that formal community public meeting from kind of neighborhood wide, and then meet back with the working group again to kind of work back and work on furthering their development applications. So this process here is called site plan application and review, and this happens a bit further on in the process. So this is when kind of their rezoning has been approved, and they're getting more into detail on their development applications. So we figured there would be a further touch point at this site plan application and review period, where they do get into more details on their development proposal, and they would meet with a working group again. And I think all of this is fairly fluid, but as a starting point, we will also include this in our market offering process. So the developer proponents are well aware of, hey, this is what, there is an existing working group. They're very involved. They do have concerns, and these are the milestone touch points where you will have to consult with the working group. So we're also formalizing in that aspect, and part of our market offering process, that the developer proponents will know that this is what they have to do. They have to meet and consult with the working group. And our timeline for this really should be happening realistically all sometime next year. If we went out for a developer proponent, let's just say in October, it would take up until at least the new year for us to really select a partner. And then by the time we negotiate and sign agreements, it would probably take place, probably closer to the summer, where we would be having the further consultation meetings that I mentioned here.
Jason, can I just interrupt and ask you a question? So you've gone through the listing in terms of, once a developer partner has been selected and the process of meetings and who they're going to meet with and so on. As part of the formal submission to the city, it would be at that time that varying types of reports and so on that would be requested by city staff. That's the time that that information would come forward, that the city would ask, for example, a needs assessment for the community, looking at studies relating to traffic impact, parking, and a variety of things. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct, because at that point, that's when they know, because obviously a lot of their plans and reports, especially for, let's just say, traffic and site servicing capacity, right? It's all based on density. It's all based on unit counts. It's all based on bedroom types. So they use all of that information to complete those reports.
So I just want to make it clear that Create.to is not preparing those reports. Is that correct?
Correct. What we are preparing are just what we call briefs. We're doing and that's just, again, once to make sure that we're just trying to de-risk the project for developer proponents, because we wouldn't want to go to market and then all of a sudden there's like a big servicing capacity issue. So we just do a high level, not detailed as their submissions are going to be, but we just do what we call briefs to just make sure that there are no major issues with developing this site. So that's kind of the due diligence that Create.to is doing now, is just to make sure that there's no real red flag issues where this site could not be developed. And then the developer proponent, you're correct, is part of having a complete submission, a formal complete submission. would have to have a checklist. The city provides a checklist where they do have to provide several detailed reports and drawings of their development proposal.
Right. And just before I open it up, remind me again, with respect to the public meeting that we had, the virtual meeting, can you remind me what the number of notices that you sent out in the community? I think my number says about 5,600. Is that correct?
I think that is correct. I think it was over, including businesses and residents.
Right. Okay, I just wanted to remind myself of that fact. Okay, so I see hands. I see, Mark, we're going to start with you because you're the first hand that I saw, and then we'll go with Bob, who's the next hand I've seen. So Mark, over to you, please.
Sure, just more of a request than a question. I think that timeline slide would be useful if some tentative dates could be included on it. Because otherwise we've got the dates for the meetings that have now taken place, but no real timeline if somebody's just reading the slide to understand. Are we talking a 1-year process, a 18-month, a 3-year process? I guess the one question I would have, as part of this this offering, is part of the offering going to include that the developer of this proponent is given access to the Concept to Keys program to accelerate development? Is that going to be an explicit thing that is available to whoever the partnership is who decides to move ahead with this?
Sorry,
Yeah.
just before we get to the answer there, Jason, can you first of all maybe describe what Concept to Keys means so that there's a full understanding of that?
Sure. So Concept to Keys.
And then you can get into Mark's question responding to that. Thanks.
Sure. So Concept to Keys is it's a program that the city has that is, I guess, run by a smaller group of city staff that are there to work to accelerate city initiatives or city development projects that are important to the city. So really, a lot of them do deal with affordable housing projects. That is a key mandate of the city right now, is providing affordable housing. And what that does is these developments that the city deems as being a priority are put through this Concept to Keys program, which does expedite planning approvals. It doesn't bypass any sort of regulatory process, but it does expedite the process in terms of review of these development applications, but not bypassing any regulatory process, but it's just expedited review.
Thank you.
To Mark's point, we would think that this site, as well as all the other Housing Now sites, will run through the Concept to Keys process as part of the site plan review.
All right. So was your question fully answered there, Mark?
Yeah, I'll drop my hand.
Okay, no problem. But you also asked about the timelines, whether or not that could be provided, and we could provide that to members of the working group so they have more detailed information on that.
Yeah,
The next,
just
ahead,
estimated dates, right? Because
Sure.
I know they're not firm, but is it a 2-year or a 3-year process? Thanks.
Yeah.
thank you, Mark. Go ahead, please, Jason. My apologies.
Oh, no, I was saying, I just wanted to add to that. Yes, we can definitely give approximate dates and timelines, but really when we will really have a better idea is the first trigger, right? Is when we have a line of sight on when we can issue our market offering, then all of the other dates will be a lot more accurate. But that's kind of the first starting point. Once we nail that date, everything will be a lot more accurate in terms of the dates.
Thank you. We have Bob, and then Khalid is next after Bob. Go ahead.
Hi,
please.
Jason. Sorry, I kind of assume it goes without saying when you said the proposal or concept proposal was developed and passed by city officials. I'm assuming these are city planning department officials.
Yes, not just city planning staff, but engineering, construction services. They're probably the biggest one, right? There's traffic, parks, communities, social development, finance, and administration, pretty much the
Sewer,
gamut of city staff.
I see.
sewer as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like from a neighbor, when a giant moves in next door, from a neighbor's perspective, looking up at the 40, the 40-story towers, this is kind of as bad. This is as bad as it could get. Is it like there's no way a developer would come back with a proposal that says we're going to put in 360-story towers.
Correct. You are correct.
Yeah, like
I know what you're trying to get at. Yes, this is also the kind of point from city staff as well, right? Is yes, you can't come in with 360-story towers, right? You can't come in with anything excessively more than this. Like this, that was also the reason for this as well, to also give developer proponents the checkpoint. Hey, like this is the limit, right? You can't go anywhere past this. So it's also used for that as well. You're right, is that city staff have also vetted this to the point that a developer can't come in with something a lot more aggressive than kind of what we've shown here.
One would assume history would indicate that any developer would want to maximize the opportunity. They wouldn't come in with seven bungalows and call it a day. They're gonna put up as much, and that's the city's objective as well, correct? Is to maximize the number of units, the number of people living there in this physical space.
It is, well, really the goal of the city, yes, is to maximize the amount of affordable housing that we can achieve at this site. So that is also part of the market offering process. We're also kind of putting it out there that you got to have a minimum 1/3 of the units as affordable housing, but if some way the developer proponents can find a way to make it feasible to achieve more than 1/3 of affordable housing, that's just, even better for the city. If they can achieve 50% of affordable housing, fantastic. But the goal of the Housing Now program, it is to maximize the amount of affordable housing that we can provide.
Right. And there was something interesting that was said, was 1/3 would be for affordable housing, and then there was a mention of 10% would be for I don't know, how do you call it, welfare housing or
deeply affordable.
Deeply affordable?
Yeah, and that is 40% of average market rent. So it's not social housing or rent geared to income housing, but it is more deeply affordable at 40% of average market rent.
Right. Oh, I see. Okay.
And that's 10% of the 1/3 of the units, not 10% of all of the units on the site.
Oh, I see. Okay, that's okay. And then one last question was, again, it was mentioned the city intended to retain title of the property and just lease it back to the developer?
Correct.
And is that to maintain the control over the percentage of units?
No, that's just to keep the land in public ownership.
Yeah.
Okay. And is to me that sounded like a show-stopping clause in the deal. But is that something common? Did developers develop city-owned property? And
yeah, they do. For the most of it, all of the Housing Now sites, they do work with that strategy where it is a 99-year land lease, and there's no way around it. These are difficult projects to make work, right? These are difficult projects to make work because affordable housing is not as lucrative, right, as building three condos or all market rentals. So what we're trying to do here is making sure and ensuring that there's no city subsidy to these projects, but still meet the city's goal in achieving affordable housing. What we are looking for is a mix of affordable rental as well as a portion of market rental as well. That's kind of the goal under a 99-year land lease.
right.
And then
Bob
will see if they can make it work and get their yields with the market rental units to kind of cover off the affordable rental.
And Bob, we'll come back to you if you have more questions later, but I also wanted to give you an example as to these arrangements that the city has made. You're familiar with the Sheridan Center,
Mhm.
Bob? So that's actually owned by the land's actually owned by the city of Toronto. The hotel that's actually on that site has a 99-year lease. It's a lot lower now. I think it's probably closer to 50 years. Because they've come to me recently wanting to kind of review that. So we have these types of arrangements in varying places in the city. So it may be new to you at the moment. And obviously this is part of the learning with respect to the working group. And I think that's fascinating for us to learn more, but it is something that's done often with the city. And owning and maintaining ownership of the land gives us control. And so that's extremely important. I think it's really important for members of the community to understand this. So it's not that you're going to see that the facilities actually is going to be run down and what have you. That's not what's going to happen. The city is going to ensure that the community's interest is reflected in to ensure that the property is maintained to a community standard. So over to you, Khalid. Good to see you and welcome.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
I don't know. I'm thinking while I'm listening to Jason and you that there are some contradictions in the information that I'm getting. It's not clear. TO creates this marketing plan to entice a developer. Originally, when they began the studies, which I understand there were a few studies that were done, it was proposed to have 2 towers, I think one at 18 floors and the other at 20. Now, I'm not sure what changed after that led to 40 stories and 20 stories and then 18 stories. That's one point that I want to raise. Secondly, TO seems, Create TO seems to be like a marketing, I don't want to use the word here publicly, but it's used to entice a developer from what I understood, but they have made their plans without consulting with the community. This is 2.5 acres of land. It's taken away all the parking of a very important transportation hub. We know that with the crosstown, not the crosstown, the Metrolinx, what's it, the Eglinton cross, what is that? Sorry.
It's Crosstown. It's Crosstown.
Yeah,
Crosstown.
yeah.
LRT. Yeah.
According to the mayor, it's going to be losing $6 to $10 million annually, correct? So we know that a lot of people have been using that parking in Scarborough, people who are living in Pickering, Port Union, they use that parking. It's very important to get to the GO train or to the TTC. Now with the crosstown, there will be a greater demand for parking. Now you're taking it away to build social housing in my backyard. Where are you going to put those vehicles? Where are people going to park when they want to use this major transportation hub that you're proposing here or that you're building, right? Especially what I understand you're going to increase the rider. You're going to have more frequent GO trains moving as well in the area. So there's a problem there. That's number one. Now, this marketing plan, it seems to be like enticing a developer to come in, develop something based on your proposal of 40 stories without even consulting with us. Now, I was looking at our park yesterday above Rainbow Village, which is about 20 stories. And as I look over, I try to imagine a building that is 20 stories above where I'm living. I can tell you there will be no sunlight even into our park, right? Where's the sun is going to come from, especially on the west side? It could have a damage in our plants or trees or flowers, right? So this bothers me. So the question is, okay, I talk about the parking, then you suddenly increase it. Originally, you were thinking of 20, 18 stories, then you increase it to 40, 30, 18 floors. That's a lot. But also yesterday, I was walking in the area inside there by the no-frills, and I spoke to a few homeowners. I asked them, hey, do you know that they're planning to put up some towers in front of you here? You know, those homes in the corner next to the hydroelectric wires, where those things are running there, the wires, I don't know what you call them. Anyway, none of the homeowners are aware that there's going to be some towers going to be built next to their homes. Are those hydroelectric installations going to be moved further to closer to those homes to accommodate this development? Because where one of the parking lot is, it actually borders it just a few feet away from the very edge, right? So are you going to move that closer to the homes that are there, or what? How are you going to accommodate this? But the point that I want to make is, while you're doing this proposal, Creatio has made this proposal. I've heard the bureaucrats saying this is what they think this area can accommodate. I'm sure I heard that. Now, what hope do we have as a community that our voices will be heard, that states clearly we do not want that density in the area? 40 stories, no. And I don't think I'm going to be convinced by what you're going to say, because.
So can we give him an opportunity to say something now, please?
Sure.
You've got a number of questions there. I've counted about 4. There's a number of comments. So Jason, Khalid has presented a number of questions to you and so on. I'm just wondering if you would just take a moment to answer.
Sure. So Khalid, I guess just
Thank you.
working back from your question. So we are still very early on in the process, and the working group's voice will be heard throughout the entire planning process, right? Like, we are still very early on. You know, the next step, as mentioned, is having a developer proponent on board. And yeah, when there is that introduction to the developer proponent who will be actually doing the formal applications and doing the actual development concept and going through that actual process, that is where, yes, you can speak up as part of the working group and say, we don't like it. We don't like the density. We don't like your proposal. And you can get into the specifics of what you don't like about their development concept. So the working group and yourself, you guys still have a very long time to voice your opinions on the project.
But what guarantee do we have that they're going to listen to you? A developer has power, influence, money. It has the city behind its back, because you want you want affordable development in our backyard.
Yeah, well, you have a lot of opportunity as part of the process with the not only discussions with the developer partner, but as mentioned, there will also be a formal community public meeting. And then this will also have to go back to city council for the rezoning. So you can also state as part of that process and depute if you like as well to council as well. So I guess the buck doesn't stop with whatever the developer wants. It'll just get pushed through. There is a formal mandated regulatory process where your voices will be heard.
And Jason, you forgot one step as well. The Scarborough Community Council will also hear it before it goes to the full council. Will that happen, or is it going to go straight?
It's going to
go straight.
Housing committee.
It's going to go straight. So that's why it's okay. So that's why it's important then for us to obviously work with the working group and to have more participation from members of the community then. So when the developer, applicant, or whoever it is that comes forward with their plan, there'll be an opportunity for members of the community to come and to depute and to provide their input. So what we have here now with respect to this process, I'll come back to you in a second, Khalid, is that this is sort of an advanced preliminary a process that really seeks to, as Create TO is bringing forward, sort of concept that we can, sift through it, and obviously members of the community can say what they like and what they don't like, and that forms, as you earlier pointed out, feeds into that bid process. That information is going to go to the developer, and at the same time, the developer will have full understanding as what the concerns are. So can you address the issue around the parking? Will there be additional parking for the people who will be using the transit system? I know on the south side there's parking. What will happen on the north side?
Well, on the north side, I think Ron mentioned it. Well, for one thing, the existing parking lot will obviously have to be removed for the development. So those parking spots will be removed. There is a new parking lot, I guess that was constructed by Metrolinx underneath the hydro corridor. We don't know what their plans are for that, but that may or may not stay. But that parking lot, obviously existing parking lot that's within the triangle piece of land, obviously that has to be removed for the development. But what we've done in the past is, we work very closely with Metrolinx and the TTC through our process on a, kind of overall parking capacity and, what the needs are. So we do work with them very closely on strategizing and understanding what their needs are for commuters. And what we've done in a few of our sites is also, there's a large amount of parking that is required for visitors. And even for the rental, we've even done it where we can kind of pool all of that parking together in a shared parking system. So
my calculation is that you're losing over 500 parking spots with this development. You have also lost the parking spot under the Eglinton Bridge, which is quite a lot. Where are these people going to park? Are they going to park in front of Rainbow Village to get to the subway? That's one. The next point I want to make, this housing developed, are they going to be shoebox-like living spaces for people? Because, most of these developments, the landlord wants, the developer, they try to maximize space in terms of the size of the units. Do you have any idea as to, are these going to be really livable spaces, or is it going to be the little shoebox kind
they
of?
they will follow the City of Toronto's growing up guidelines, which are guidelines for providing family-sized housing, and just not only just this, but in terms of minimum requirements for unit sizes and minimum requirements for larger suites like 2 and 3 bedrooms, but also just generally, right? Planning the landscaped areas and common areas that are more conducive for families. So these will follow the growing up guidelines from the city. And that's a city document.
So the hydro lines on the north side.
We are not moving them because one, that's probably a major expense that we wouldn't want to undertake.
But you're going to put a tower there, right? The parking lot is on the border of it, just a few. I walked there yesterday, and I walk there every day. It's just about 2 meters away.
No.
It's somebody to live there with high-powered wires. Little babies, imagine little babies growing up.
Sir, Khalid, can we get him just to answer, please, the question that you've just posed to him, please?
Yeah, well,
Go ahead,
I'm
please.
asking him, so I'm looking for the answer. But
Yeah, that's right. I want him to
I
answer
don't
the
think he
question.
understood the question because he's saying no. It's
You
on
want
the
to
border.
restate it again for him so that he gets it, please? Thanks.
Sure.
Do you want to restate it again, please?
Khalid, we're 23 meters away. 23 to 25 meters away from the hydro.
I'll take a picture and send it to you tomorrow, Jason.
Okay, do you want me to share a plan actually from our architects that shows the distance?
I hope I'm not.
Yeah, please do that,
Yeah.
Jason. Please do that. Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
Can everybody see that plan there?
Yeah, yeah.
So here is the hydro corridor in red, right here in the middle of the hydro corridor. You can see the distance here from the corner, the closest corners of the building. I don't know if you can see that dimension, but that's 23 meters and that's 25 meters. And another thing we didn't note here, though, is that there's a hydro corridor here that is actually less than that distance to what's existing. So I guess these homes along, I think this is Trevorton. They're
It is
actually
Trevorton.
higher to they're actually closer to the hydro corridor than our development would be on this side, which is 23 meters and 25 meters. And then there's a second hydro corridor with the towers that are running, I guess, further north away from us. But we are actually further in terms of the distance from the hydro lines at 23 meters and 25.
Mhm.
There are hydro wires just at the very edge of Tower A, which is on the north side, which is not 23 meters away
Sorry,
from.
you're saying that's fronting the North Service Road?
Yeah, I saw it there. It's very, very close up. It borders that parking lot there. It's above, more or less. Well, not quite above, but just a few meters away.
Okay, but yeah, here we have at least a minimum 5 meter setback. We can maybe do an overlay of where the hydro line, I guess, is here, but that's fairly typical, I guess, in terms of, I guess, just standard hydro wires on standard roads, right? In terms of the distance of even a single family house, right? They have hydro wires running across their front yards as well in most scenarios all over the city.
All right. Any further questions, Khalid? Have all your questions been answered?
Well,
Just looking at my list. Oh, I think the sun, you
yeah,
had one about the sunlight and
Shadow.
shadow. So just wondering if we can maybe just address that, because I would imagine, Jason, that going forward, there would be shadow studies and so on done in order to look at what those impact is and sort of the angular plane and things like that. Would that be correct?
Absolutely, and unfortunately, I don't have it on hand, but there was a preliminary study done by the architects. I think they might have even showed it in April. I think they may have showed it in April, which kind of shows, the hours of the day through each season, spring and fall, when there are shadows cast wherever throughout the adjacent neighborhood. And obviously that'll be redone again when the developer comes on board. But I think the important thing to note as well is that this development will have to follow the City of Toronto's tall building guidelines. And what that really does is that restricts, or that really assists with the amount of shadows. So these towers, they're point towers, right? They've got a maximum 750 square meter floor plate, and with a built form that is more of a point tower, the shadows move very quickly past them. Unlike, I guess, the older buildings, built, let's just say in the 70s or 80s, they're more slab, long towers where shadows cast a shadow for a lot longer period of time. So following the City of Toronto's tall buildings guidelines, these shadows move quickly past these towers because they are long slab buildings, they're point towers.
the tall building guidelines, I think from what I've read, it states that it should not in any way obscure the light to the building that it's facing. It should not go above. If there's a certain height that the building adjacent is at, you cannot build above that. Am I misreading the information there? And if you have the study, would you be able to send it to us so that we can look at it?
Yeah, Khalid, that's a good point. I was going to ask him to do that because that's helpful. And that's part of the reason for this working group, so that detailed information could be presented to members so that they can review it at their leisure, and that at the next opportune time when we have these meetings, and you're much more informed and, formulating your questions. And of course, there's ongoing opportunity to be able to engage Jason and his team and so on with questions. So I think that's important. I did see, just briefly, I think that there was something from Ron that I saw in the chat, and there's a question, I think, pertaining to your questions, Khalid, and I think this is very helpful. And Jason, you may want to touch on them, but I think it was about why are these studies not being done at this time? I think that's what Ron was actually getting at. Jason, I wonder if you could maybe just address that, please.
Sure. I'm not sure which studies in particular, but it's
I don't know
meant to be-
either. Ron, you want to tell us which studies you're talking about, please?
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Really, it's all about the feasibility studies, which includes all the things like Michael that you had mentioned: traffic, school systems, amenities, road congestion, all the transit stuff. That's all the whole parts of. If it's and this is not just about 2444. This is about the community. So on the southwest corner, there's more condos going to be built. So we need the bigger picture. And I just want to go back to this. This has been mentioned since 2018. And in 2020, we started to hear about some of this. So we're really falling behind in trying to understand this. And that's why I think there's a lot of anxiety, because we just think the bus is going ahead of us without us. And that's a key thing.
Okay. So Ron, can I just add just before we go to Jason, and Jason will give you an opportunity to comment on that with respect to the studies. And I think it's really important. Jason had put in the sort of the timeline. The studies are not going to be done until the planning application and the staff are engaged as part of this process. And the staff will be asking for those studies. They're not going to be done in advance, because at this particular point in time, in as much as we have an area, we have a particular site, the fact of the matter is what we're doing right now, it's all being scoped out as part of concepts until such time that we actually have that application that shows what the height of the building, the density, and all that details. None of those studies are going to be done. So I want to basically allow people to understand, unless the city were to be able to do, let's say, a secondary plan study, which they're not doing at this particular point in time, because obviously with respect to this site, it's going to be incumbent on the developer proponent to do all of those studies, Ron, which I mentioned. And so that's why I'm not going to lose any sleep over it, because it's not going to happen in advance. It's going to happen as part of the process. And in my years, I've never seen it happen in advance. I've always seen it happen as part of a process. That's what's happening on Eglinton. That's what's happening on Lawrence Avenue. That's what's happening on Birchmount. That's what's happening on other areas that are not within our areas. So I just want to say to members of the working group, I believe that it's really helpful to have all that information. It's not a question of not having the information. It's a question of when we get the information. And there is time as part of the process, the timeline that Jason has identified, because this is not unique. This isn't the first rodeo that we've gone through this exercise. The fact of the matter is that all of those things that you want and that you need, it is important for the city staff to make the decision as part of the planning, the tech services, and all that details. It is extremely important for council, for your local council, which is who I am, to make those particular decisions. So in as much as I am, not celebrating the city's desire and intent to do what they're doing, the fact of the matter is that what I want to figure out, and working with you as a small working group on behalf of the broader community, is to figure out ways that our concerns, our issues are addressed. I can assure you that as part of the process, this is how it's done. I've been through a lot of these. So I will say to you, I don't want you to lose any sleep thinking that these are not going to be done. But I will just simply say the final point, they're not going to be done in advance. They're going to be done as part of a process. And I'll just stop there. Go ahead. Please.
Okay, and just if I could
Ron,
recap
anything
on
further?
it,
Go ahead, please. Sure, go ahead.
Yeah,
please.
I just want to just say that thanks. So what I understand is city council and Mayor Tory back in 2018 approved a concept with proposals from Creatio on recommendations now based on.
That's not what I understand. That's not what I understand.
That's what I'm understanding.
But you're wrong. But you're wrong, Ron. And maybe I'll get Jason to comment. And I use the term wrong, not in a pejorative sense, just wrong in the sense that that's not the case. That's all. So I'm not saying
you're wrong.
It's
tomato.
Go ahead.
we're doing the same thing and we're seeing what we see. You see yours and I see mine, and that's what
Fair
we're trying to
enough.
get
So
together,
Jason,
right?
that's right, exactly. Jason, go ahead, please.
The Deputy Mayor is correct. City Council did not approve this concept. They did approve this site as being a Housing Now site, but they did not approve the concept that Create TO has presented. They approved this site being developed and as affordable housing site under the Housing Now program. So that is what has been approved, and what has been approved is for, I guess, Create TO to implement that in terms of developing this site for affordable housing. They did not, this concept was not shown to council or approved to council, because as mentioned, this is just a preliminary kind of draft reference concept. And until we have a developer partner, there's really nothing for City Council to look at and weigh in on and approve.
Okay, thanks, Jason. I understand that. And just to recap on it, so from the community's point of view, what we see is that all of council's voting. Scarborough's, Michael, you're one person out of 20 something. So majority rules, the votes go through. So people that are representing downtown have a vote on something that's not really in Scarborough. They don't know the community. They don't know anything that's going on. That's my perception, my observation. So the voting, as much as it's democratic, it still needs to be represented by ourselves. And Scarborough has, been neglected a lot on transportation. It's great we're getting it, but now we're wondering to say, like Khalid mentioned and others are saying, there's parking there. And I go back to the point I've mentioned online here, is there's an inclusionary clause which all developers you could incorporate in building permits, which means Yonge and Eglinton, everywhere, we would have thousands and thousands of people, and I'm not doing the math, just in my head, a lot of opportunities, not just in the public land, but in private land. And that would really help everybody. So I'm here to help try to make it and be both ways, that we have a transportation hub and we also have community housing and affordable housing. So we're trying to do the same things, it's just how.
Okay, that's helpful. Thanks very much, Ron. Jason, I don't know if you wanted to comment. There's just a comment from Ron. Thanks very much for that, Ron. Jason, you want to add anything?
I didn't have anything to add to that.
Yeah.
But no,
Okay,
I guess I will agree with Ron. Yes, inclusionary zoning it's a great.
And it's coming. It's coming.
Exactly.
It's coming. It's
But-
coming. It's coming.
But, the city has to find every means that they have to address these situations.
So Michael, sorry, I just have one comment.
Go ahead, please.
Since you have announced this development, we've had 6 condo units sold here, people who are fishing on the west. And people are selling out their units because they're worried about this development. What they're seeing is a loss of property value. And it's creating a very bad stench in their noses because, a friend of mine bought a unit on the 12th floor for $650,000 with the nice, beautiful view on the west side. He paid $650,000 for a 2-bedroom unit. Now, you guys are going to put affordable housing next to his back door in his backyard. Now, I read someone saying that it's okay to use the parking lot to build these affordable housing because it's a waste of resources. Good heavens, you don't live here. You're not going to lose money. You don't have a home here. Take it to your backyard.
Okay, thanks for the comment.
That's
All right.
You understand my view,
Okay,
my point of view.
No, I totally understand your view. No problem. Any other questions or comments on the matter that we've been discussing, 2444 Eglinton Avenue? We are going to conclude this meeting at around 7:30 or earlier, depending on whether or not folks had any additional comments to make. But I think it's really important that I'll get to you in a second, Ron. Come back to you in a second. I think it's extremely important for us to realize that in as much as some folks may not like what the city is proposing, what we are trying to do here is trying to figure out how to minimize the impact. The city's intention is to develop 2444 Eglinton Avenue East. The reason why I propose that we actually come together as part of a working group is to basically ensure that we can bring all of the concerns that we have, you know, all the concerns, whatever, small, big, whatever they are, and kind of put it on the table, and then to work through those as part of the process that the city itself has established. There is a planning process, public component associated with that. There's a city's intention with respect to developing. If this was a private developer who bought the land from the city and came in and wanted to put 3 or 4 towers, we'd be worrying about going to LPAT, fighting and doing all of these things. The city obviously wants to address the issue with respect to housing and affordability of housing. We have thousands and thousands of people living in the city who don't have good affordable housing. The city's Housing Now intention is to try to address that. So I just want to remind members of the community that, you know, I'm not here celebrating or cheering. I would rather certain other things happen here, but I have to deal with the reality. And I think, Ron, you kind of touched on it. You say, look, you're one of 26. There are people of vast array who are not part of Scarborough will be making the decision. Well, this is the way the decisions are made in Toronto. I get to make decisions on things that are happening in North York, Etobicoke, East York, and downtown Toronto, and so on. What I think as members of this community, what I think your responsibility and your obligation is to put out there the things that are, you know, disturbing you about this application, whether that's the height, the issue, or the hydro, the proximity of the electricity, and all of those details. Let's drill through those. Let's get all of the studies that Ron is referring to and so on, and let's see them. Because these are independent information that are being brought forward. They're not necessarily prepared by city staff. We're asking the applicant to go through the process and get that, which is not unique. It's kind of what we do. Ron, I'll come to you next, and then I guess I see Augustria, you have your hand up, so I'll come to you. Go ahead, please, Ron. Ron, can you hear me?
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah, no, go ahead, please. I think you were commenting, so I just wanted to make sure you're going to talk about what we were just talking about, and then we'll go to Augustria. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Thanks very much again. And Michael, I do understand all that stuff, and that's why we're sitting here trying to get this thing together. So Jason, and I've had lots of chats with Jason and Jeffrey and them. We're talking about a working group. I'd referred this more to a team. Sorry for semantics, but it's not a group unless we're communicating together. We're here on show right now. I think we can do another step a little better to get the team actually communicating together and having our own discussions and share that with you. But make sure if we get some consensus instead of not knowing. And this is a learning process, like you said. This is the first of. You know, I don't know what they did at Warden. Sorry, but you know, there's other ones there. I can't be everywhere either. and yeah, so you know, it's like, you know, there's always going to be a Ron or somebody out there that's going to say something, and we're doing it with respect. But you know, it's a learning curve. So what I'm looking for is that, you know, and we've made strides now. We're finally getting copied together on information. That's sharing information, because I didn't know what Khalid said and someone else said. We all need that information. Mark's saying things I don't know. He doesn't know what I'm saying. That's a key to the success of this thing, is to get everybody together. And you know what? Even if we're negotiating internally on what we think, it's like a jury, right? It's like we're trying to figure out what's the right way to do things.
And I agree with you. And so I guess my question is to Jason, in terms of the platform for us to communicate. What I do with other groups, I use Slack, right? It's an opportunity where people can come in, they can talk amongst themselves, you have information, you can share it, and everyone can have access to it. I wonder if we could take a look at that, because it's easy to upload, it's easy access. So that would create an opportunity where members can communicate and talk to one another, independent, Jason, of you and myself, but at the same time, we're also part of that process. So Ron, I can definitely take a look at that to see, and I don't see why we can't do it. Members of the working group, it's just another step. It's another upload of, and it's relatively easy. I use it with a number of different groups that I chair and different organizations that I work with, and it works really well. So if it's okay with you folks, what I would do is I would suggest that I'll work with, my office will work with Creatio, and we can come up with something, but it will be driven by Creatio because they're kind of the backbone of it. And let me just say this, because I hadn't said it before. Jason, thank you. You have been very clear, you and your team, and whether or not we like what's being proposed or not, you have been extremely professional, and I want to thank you for that. So I want to publicly acknowledge you and acknowledge your leadership. And so I say thank you. I don't want to say this at the end when we're running out of time. I want to say it now. So thank you so much for your professionalism and your understanding. And so, you know, this is a situation where this development is taking place in people's backyard. So they're going to feel a different way about it. And it may not be consistent with respect to the views that others may have. And I think we have to give them the allowance for that and appreciate what they're saying, because I appreciate what they're saying and so on. So what we do need to do is dial it in where we actually have the ability to talk to one another and information sharing and so on. So if we can agree to that, I'm all in favor of that. So if that's okay, Ron,
Yeah,
I'll move
and
on to.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
that's exactly okay. And that's what I've said with Jason and them too about privacy, respect of privacy. You just have to ask each one of us, based on the rules, we talk to each other and share information. That's it. You're not going to take my name and sell it to a retailer. That's a different thing, right? So this is what we're talking about. So this is
And
the
on the
team.
Slack-
It's about this topic, and that's where we go.
Yeah, and
So
on the
that's
Slack,
great.
that
That'd be
works
great. I
really
hope
well.
everyone else, Mark and Sanel, you guys are all okay with that too?
I'm okay with it.
You think
Yeah.
you think you'll get some
Excellent.
value out if we share thoughts together
Absolutely.
respectfully?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, thank you,
I know
Ron.
too,
Okay,
David.
so I'm going to move over.
I do.
I'm going to move over to Augustry now, please.
Okay.
Augustry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you,
You've been
Mr.
very
Thomas. I have been on all the meetings so far, and I've been silent because I just want to observe what is being said and what is going on. And tonight I decide to speak because what I am hearing, which I thought I heard from the first public meeting to now, is that the word affordable is what is having people antsy and getting them concerned. Like Mr. Thompson had said, if it was some private person that is going to build a condo or anything like that, we would not say not in my backyard and all these things like that. Because the word affordable isn't there, we are afraid, we think it is something for us to be so fearful of that is coming there. And I think that is one of the main issues, and I think it's one of the elephants in the room, which, being honest, let's deal with it. I know the other things, yes, is valid, but that is it. Because there's a difference between affordable housing and subsidized housing, and people are thinking it's like TCHC, because I've heard so many things said, oh, we have, how much of already in our community? We don't have any of this in our community. We don't have these in Scarborough. So I, Augusta Monroe, I am for that coming there where people can get decent quality, affordable housing that they can afford. And affordable does not mean you will be paying $80 a month for rent. Affordable means that you have to be working for a certain amount to able to get into there. And I think probably that's what need to be explained to the working group, what the affordable means. Affordable does not mean it's for any and everybody. It doesn't. It's not everybody that can afford it, although it says and use the word affordable. It is just a buzzword that is put in there. So I want us to get away from this fear and realize, yes, some of us live in condos, some of us live in homes, our own homes that we have purchased. And we live there and we're comfortable. And because we have it, we got to open our hearts and say, other people need to have a decent place to also live. It's not about, I am saying it, it's not about being selfish. So I am okay, I am fine. I don't care about you, where you live, what it looks like. And I think in this time that we live in and in this world, we need to open our hearts and we need to think about other people. Because had we been in that situation, wouldn't we have liked to have something that is decent? That's all I'm going to say for tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, I see, Mark, I'll come back to you in a second. Let me just check my screen to see if there's anybody else. Okay.
You never mentioned.
No, I don't care how much to go.
All right, Mark, I see you, your hand's up. Please, your hand is still up. I don't know if it's a new one or it was the old one.
Oh, that's the old one. Sorry.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. Mark, go ahead, please.
Sure. So I mean,
I just have to remind everyone, we've got about 9 minutes left.
having our volunteers, like I said, have been on calls for every one of the Housing Now sites that have come along so far. And height concerns come up on every single site. And one of the things that I'd like to try and help explain, and maybe somebody at Create TO can help explain this as well, is that the building at Rainbow Village right now that you live in today could not be built under the current City of Toronto urban design guidelines. You have a floor plate, and Khalid, you might be able to get the number but the building that faces the tracks is essentially a box, and it's 17 stories tall, Khalid, something like that, 16?
18.
18 stories tall, and the floor plate on that is around about 1,900 square meters on every floor. To get that 60% more units per floor than are allowed today. And so even though these towers that they're talking about are 40-story towers, they're actually only generating the same amount of square footage as your 18-story building. So this is about, design choices that the city has made, tower guidelines, built form guidelines. I'd be the happiest guy in the world if I could build 18 or 20-story box on this site that came in at 1,900 square meters or 2,000 square meters per floor. The reason why we're getting all of this additional height is because each individual floor has to be 40% of the size of one of the floors that your building is. So, it's really about being able to generate units and build at a level of affordability that makes sense. If you're looking for less height on those buildings, then we could push for bigger floor plate on every floor. It's about generating the same amount of square footage is what we need in order to create family-sized units, wheelchair accessible units, affordable units, all the things that are in the city requirements. So I mean, that might be a useful exercise for somebody to go through. And if somebody's got the blueprints for your Rainbow Village building, our volunteers are happy to sort of show how that building could not be built today under the zoning bylaws. And that's why you're getting the height. You're getting the height because everything else is being incredibly constrained. So I don't know if that's useful, but that's where the height comes from.
Okay, that's a good explanation, but the point is you're negating our concerns in terms of the density, especially the small space of 2.5 acres, packing 900 units when you have, when Victoria, Michael can tell us how much acres have been used there for that project there. This is a very, very small space for that amount of units. And this is going to put a lot of stress on social services in the area, libraries, schools. It's going to have an environmental impact as well.
Can I just respond to that in the sense that, I guess in terms of that density, as mentioned, right, all of these studies will respond to that in terms of the density that's proposed on the site. But I think an important thing that we also have to note here in terms of the density. Deputy Mayor Thompson did mention, transit-oriented development. But another thing is, it's not just the city, it's also provincial policy guidelines where the city is mandated to follow density targets that are mandated by the province. And, obviously a site like this, right, Eglinton Crosstown LRT, Kennedy GO Station, Kennedy TTC subway station, the bus terminal, the Scarborough subway expansion, like this is a very transit-oriented site where the province is mandating minimum density targets. So the city can't actually underdevelop the site because they do have to follow the city's policy, the province's policies as well with respect to densities that need to be achieved at their sites in the city. So it's not just city, it's also leading to provincial policy as well.
So the provincial government, we know as a majority government, they got it the Planning Act, right? To favor development because they're in bed with the developers. And I understand the problem with social housing and affordable housing. But why are we having this discussion then if you're negating our concerns in terms of density? Am I just throwing water on the duck's back here when I guess 90% of our residents signed a petition saying they do not want 40 stories in their backyard, right? It was sent to.
If I can just comment, so this is a political thing and it's about the province. Elections are next year and we can deal with our own MPPs and all that kind of stuff, right? That's why I think we can actually have that done.
Yeah, can I just add to that, since we're talking politics? I want to remind you that this government didn't essentially make the planning policy exclusively for the province of Ontario. These planning policies have been in with multiple different governments. So I think we just need to remember that it isn't simply a political situation. And I know that's kind of the commentary that's been made. I think, to be fair, the province of Ontario, under a number of different governments, both Liberal, Conservative, and NDP, have actually put in place these policies to help guide municipal development across the province of Ontario. So I want to just, and I'm not, playing any favorite. I'm just simply saying, I just want to make sure we correct these things, that it isn't just simply one government. We're at 7:28, and I'm going to wrap it up now by doing the following. So, members of the working group, you have been absolutely fantastic. You have brought forward, again, additional concerns and added and sort of remind us of some of the other concerns that you had, which I had addressed earlier on. Jason has been very helpful with respect to the presentation and the timelines that are extremely important. We have a lot of work to do, folks. There's a real need for you to get engaged. We're going to get engaged. We're going to roll up our sleeves and get our hands into the mix of it and so on. I just want to reiterate that if it was possible to put a stop to this, I'd be leading the charge. It's not. What is possible is to ensure that our concerns are addressed as part of the process that Jason has outlined. I say I would lead the charge in the sense that I want affordable housing. I want things to happen, but my approach would have been perhaps a little different. And that is nobody's fault other than council's made a decision in terms of how we address these things. So I want to remind everyone that the exercise that we're going to go through in the next number of months and so on is going to involve engaging in discussion and so on. And that's going to happen. We're going to look to develop an opportunity for communications to happen when we don't necessarily have these meetings. So it'll be ongoing, and that feedback will come in amongst ourselves and will come into Creatio and to my office as well. And so we've heard some additional things tonight, and there is an opportunity for us to go back. And we mentioned earlier that the real nuts of this will come when the engagement as part of the planning process with the city and all of the studies, all of the reports that are needed in order to help to make a more informed decision will come forward. So I want to thank you all very much for participating in tonight's meeting. Thank the folks, Jason and your team from Creatio. Thank very much members of the community and so on. And I don't know when the next meeting will be just yet, but I will say this: we will come back to you to let you know what that platform will be, what we'll use to allow us to be able to communicate. So I thank you all very much for tonight's participation, and I wish you all well and stay healthy, and to you and your family, we will see you soon. Okay, thank you very much. Signing out. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.